So you think you may be ready to start investing in real estate, but the plethora of information out there on the internet has your head spinning. Which market to invest in? Should I buy in Toronto or in the secondary or tertiary markets? What type of an investment strategy should I use? Am I flipping? Am I buying and holding? Should I get tenants? Should I get pre-con? It's overwhelming to say the least. I'm here to help with my experience and expertise, and hopefully I can make it a little bit more clear for you by the end of this video. By the way, if you're a returning viewer, thank you for helping me build momentum on this channel. If you're new here, welcome, and I hope you stay. If you like what I have to say, press that subscribe button and click the bell to be notified every time I post a new real estate video. My name is Mila. I'm a real estate broker in Toronto. I've been passionate about everything real estate for years now, and I'm also very passionate about the future of the city as a whole, as well as the housing. I am an active volunteer with the Urban Land Institute in Toronto. I also attend all of the talks about the economy, Toronto housing, the development infrastructure, all of the things to keep myself active and in the loop with everything that's going on. I've also worn all of the hats when it comes to real estate. I've been a seller and buyer myself of personal property as well as investments, and I help my clients do the same on a regular. I'm here to share my fails as well as my triumphs with you so that your journey is as smooth as possible. All right, let's get into the meat of all the information. So first and foremost, what we need to understand is the different options that are available to you as an investor as far as the strategies go. I'm gonna make a couple of assumptions about you, and that is being that you're likely a first-time investor, somebody that's a small-time investor who's doing their research. So we're not talking about like multi-unit residential investment properties, because we wanna start small and build our way to something that's big like that, okay? So with somebody that's a smaller scale investor, your options are as follows. Number one, you're looking at pre-construction properties. Number two, you're looking at a buy and hold strategy, which is where you buy a property, be it a condo or a house, you put a tenant in there and you're holding it long term and riding the wave of appreciation. And number three, you can buy and flip. So let's start with the strategy of pre-construction. Pre-construction has to be the easiest investment strategy out there, but this ease also comes with significant risks. So let's talk about it. What's good about pre-construction? Number one, you do not need the 20% down payment because you're paying in increments of 5%, in some cases even better, over a period of multiple years. So we're talking like 4 to 5 years during the construction period. With condos, usually they take 4 to 5 years. Secondly, you don't have to deal with tenants, you don't have to deal with the mortgage until the property is built. So there's no maintenance, none of that. You're just putting down these 5% deposits over time, which makes it also a lot more accessible to more people. Now, the downside of pre-construction, there are a few. Number one is you're paying a significant premium on pre-construction at the time of purchase. As of the time of recording this, in Toronto, the premium for pre-construction is anywhere between 30 to 40% and sometimes even more. You can buy an existing condo for about $1,100 per square foot today, but pre-construction trades at $1,600 per square foot minimum and more in many cases. There are pre-constructions out there right now that are selling for $2,000 a foot and more. So you are betting that by the time this property is built, you are going to be the market will appreciate at least 30 to 40% for you to just break even. And you do want to break even because when you're getting that mortgage, if the bank appraises your property lower than what you agreed to pay, guess who has to come up with that difference in cash? It's you. Now, there is a segment of people who invest in pre-construction in order to sell it in assignment. It was a very viable option before, but developers really quickly latched onto it and they decided to take those premiums for themselves. So today, like I said, again, you're buying at a 40% premium. It's very, very hard to predict whether or not you're going to even break even at the time of completion. But also the taxes that the government imposes on assignment sales, which are sales before you have to get that mortgage, are significant. Like we're talking 53% of all your gains, if you have any at all, will be gone because of the taxes. So that makes it pretty unappealing to a lot of people, but at the same time, if that's your only option, well then that's your only option, and it's still a good way to go. I personally have 2 pre-constructions building right now for the same reasons of not needing to get a mortgage for a while down the road, and of course there are better developers than others, so we can talk a little bit more about that. All right, so the second strategy that we brought up was the buy and hold strategy. Within this strategy, there's also a branch that's called BRRRR, which stands for buy, rehabilitate, refinance. Buy, rehabilitate, rent it out, refinance, and repeat. Okay, so this strategy would involve a little bit more funds on your part, so you want to be a little bit more cash flushed with cash in order to facilitate that, but this is a little bit more advanced, so we're going to put that to the side, and we're going to just talk about buying a property that's already ready to be rented out, putting a tenant into it, and just holding. This strategy allows you to ride the wave of price appreciation. It's relatively simple because it doesn't really involve too much knowledge or involvement on your part. However, it is definitely more involving than the pre-construction strategy, because now you have a tenant, you have to understand and know very well your rights and responsibilities as the landlord, as well as the rights and responsibilities of the tenant. And if there is an issue, guess who manages that? It's you. I mean, of course, if you have multiple properties, it might be worth it to hire a property manager, but when you're a small-time investor and you only have one property, it really isn't that much manpower or time that's required out of you. So it's nice and easy. I actually really like this strategy. I think it's my favorite. But if you do choose this strategy, this again branches out into more questions, such as what property type should you get? Are we talking condo? Are we talking townhouse? Are we talking a house? And where should you do this? And the location of this property will really determine whether or not you are cash flowing on a monthly basis with your tenants. Cash flows are very important to a lot of people, but cash flows do come with a catch. And I'm gonna go over that a little bit deeper shortly, because I do wanna go through the third strategy. So the third strategy is buying in order to flip. This requires a lot more specialized knowledge on your part, or it requires a lot more funds to get this going. Now, also, the government does want to dissuade people from doing this type of investments, and they have imposed a tax from the beginning of 2023 that they call a flipping tax, which basically says that if you own a property and you flip it within a time frame that's less than a year, you are going to be taxed. Now, again, it is tougher to realize gains from a project like this in the Toronto market. You actually have to go to the tertiary markets and secondary markets and find properties there and make the numbers make sense, because in Toronto and even in the secondary markets of the city like the GTA, we are finding ourselves in more and more competition. And when you're competing against like first-time buyers or buyers who are end users, who will, you know, pay a little bit less but still compete for properties that are not as appealing because they can just do it themselves and renovate on their own, but that will allow them to get into a property while they do that. So that competition pushes the prices up and kind of kills the margins for a lot of flippers. So again, it's not the most viable option for most people, but if you do have that specialized knowledge, you're a carpenter, you're a trade, and you're able to just manage the project yourself and do a lot of the stuff yourself, it might be something that is worth looking into. Again, you will want to hold it for longer than a year to avoid that tax, which also will eat into your profit. So might be a tough one to consider, but it's out there for those who can make that work. Is this resonating? I'm kind of just documenting the conversations I already have with my beginner investors. So if you haven't ruminated on these questions before, you probably are. And if you landed on this video, you probably have the same questions. So if this info is helpful, press that like button. I love the support. And I'd love to hear from you as well. So comment below if you are a beginner investor, if you have yet to acquire an investment property, if you're just researching. I want to know which stage of the investment journey you're on, and start some conversations. All right, so we're finally at the cash flowing phase, which is intrinsically connected to the location when it comes to real estate in the GTA. So what do I mean by that? When you're investing in Toronto, even with 20% down payment, the properties in Toronto, they do not cash flow. You need to have like 40 or 50% these days to be able to cash flow or even break even. So why do people still invest in properties in Toronto when they're not getting any cash flows? And the answer is stability and appreciation. Okay, so fundamentally, the central markets of Toronto are less volatile. They have stronger potential for appreciation, lower risk. They are more resilient when we encounter economic turmoil. And whatever you pay out of pocket on a monthly basis for Toronto properties, you make multiple times over when it comes time to sell down the road. However, if you are contemplating investing in Toronto and you don't have like $500 to $1,000 a month to spend and commit to that for years to come before you start breaking even, Toronto might not be the market for you to invest in. So let's quickly talk about the pros and cons of getting the cash flows or not getting the cash flows and being in Toronto, or getting the cash flows and being in the secondary and tertiary markets of the GTA. In Toronto, you're getting a tenant, you are out of pocket $500 to $1,000, sometimes even more, but you're typically getting a stronger tenant profile. Not to be like discriminatory or anything, but like we look at a tenant profile from several things. We're looking at employment, we're looking at income, we're looking at credit history and credit score, and we're looking for references as well. We also want to look for somebody that's not going to be staying in the property for a very, very long time. So sometimes you do want longer term tenants, like 2-3 years is fine. But once you have somebody staying for much longer than that, you start getting behind on the market rents. Okay, and that's been the case in some instances where people have locked in condo units in Toronto for like $1,500 a month for a 1-bedroom, or during COVID people locked in like 1-bedroom units for $1,750. Meanwhile, right now those same units are going for $2,500. So those landlords are obviously hurting, and that's where that turnover of people coming into Toronto, like executives or people who are working downtown, who are trying to build their way towards their first property, that is a way to avoid that and help you stay on top of your appreciation and growth as far as the market rents go. Now, when you're looking at the secondary and tertiary markets, the pro obviously is that you are getting cash flow. The cons of that is that those areas, those markets are typically more volatile. There's economic turmoil, they get hurt sooner, or they get hurt first, and they recover last typically. So as far as appreciation goes, that's a little bit tougher to predict. And of course, you're not getting the same type of a tenant profile lives in those areas. So the typical household income is going to be lower there, and you're getting like more families, which is not bad, but those are people who are either lifetime renters or people who stay in the property much, much longer, which again is nice and easy for you as the landlord. But when it's 10 years down the road and your tenants are paying like $1,000 or even more dollars less than what the current market rent is, you start hurting. And I see these stories all the time in different forums. That creates a lot of tension and issues between tenants and their landlords. And then when you as a landlord decide to sell that property, the new person has to acquire that tenant if they're an investor, which again makes things more difficult, because if you're not cash flowing, well, the appeal is kind of gone out of that property. So now you can't sell for a premium, which further puts that downward pressure on your price. So there's no right answer really for whether you want the cash flows or you don't, or you want that appreciation and the stability that Toronto offers, or you want to start outside and build your way up. It's just whatever works best for you. Can you or can you not carry that commitment of being out of pocket every month in the name of getting the higher appreciation later? Or do you just want something that's stable and gives you that cash flow in the long term, and then you'll figure it out later? So guys, I was trying to keep it really short and concise, but every single scenario that I go through has branches that stem out of it that create multiple other scenarios. So if you want to get further into your particular situation, I'd love to talk to you. There is a link to my Calendly in the description underneath this video. You can book a call with me, we can go for a coffee, or we can talk on the phone. It's up to you, and we can discuss your specific scenario. I'll be happy to help. Or you can email me at mila@milasheina.ca, and don't forget to check out this video next.